Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Empower You Studio and happy St. Patrick's Day. We're glad to have you here. It's kind of a bunkered down studio tonight. We've got 4 total people in attendance here. We've got Betty is working security on the doors over there and making sure we have plenty of hand sanitizer. We've got Bill Roll, hopefully going to pass out some virtual popcorn tonight. And we've got Jay competently manning our audio, and we're looking forward to a good night. So with respect to the Empower You Studio schedule, we're so disappointed that we've had to postpone a few classes because we know how you look forward to coming on Tuesdays and Thursday nights and hearing great speakers. Wherever we have the ability to do a class virtually over the next month and a half, we will do that. And then we also have plans to introduce a couple surprise classes that might be timely over the next month. Watch your email on that, and the overriding factor will be to watch the website, and any news about anything will be there first. So go to empoweruohio.org. Anybody you'd like to see us have in to try to talk over the next month and a half, there will be a lot of people without stuff to do. Jot us a note. We'd love to hear what you have to say. So, I wanted to just share a couple things with you tonight before we get started. And the first would be the legislation that the House and the Senate is working on to provide relief to businesses primarily that's going on. And I wanted to let you know what one of the hangups in the Senate might be. I don't know if it got resolved today or not, but there is a provision in the Emergency Family and Medical Leave Expansion Act that was passed by the House that really impacted companies like ours that have between 50 and 500 employees. And here's what that provision says. So this will just give you an idea of what might be holding up that legislation, because I heard a lot of senators talk about it. It says after the first 14 days of an employee's leave, the employer must provide paid leave for each day of the leave at 2/3 of the employee's regular rate of pay. So that's something that maybe sounds good. Everybody would love to be able to do that. But what that would mean here at my company, Frame USA, would be that 52 people could all decide they wanted to go on FMLA leave, and we would be responsible for 2/3 of their salary for as long as they were gone. And it's a crazy provision, like a lot of acts Congress provides are. And this was the kind of deal that I believe the Congress people had 11 minutes to read the bill before it was voted on. But what's so crazy about the bill is that for employers of over 500 people, they don't have to comply with that provision. So this is just one act that's really hard on employers of 50 employees up to 500. Just the kind of people that we should be trying to help. So when the whole COVID-19 thing hit really hard over the weekend, you know, we all had a lot of decisions we had to make. And I found myself kind of being a little negative about things. I don't know if you've maybe had the same theory and down in the dumps and really just angry about it. So it was kind of Jeff Ruby, who I follow on Twitter every now and then, that kind of helped pull me out of it. So thanks to him. He always has some interesting things to say. And he sent out a tweet that said, be safe, be vigilant. Tough times don't last, tough people do. And that just kind of got me on more of a positive mode. If there's one thing I can convey to you tonight, one suggestion, one thing I want you to try to do, and that would be to stay positive no matter what. There are a lot of people that are down and depressed about their circumstances. I've met many people who have lost their jobs already. Whatever you can do to be positive, please do. So what I thought I would do is try to come up with a top 10 list of 10. Oh, I've got my drum roll of 10 reasons why we should remain positive. So number 10, this may not be one you want to hear, but the United States per capita has more critical care beds than any other country in the world. They've got 34.7 critical care beds per 100,000 inhabitants. So at least we've got the best care possible, and that's good. Number 9, we've got our pets, our adorable cats and dogs to love us, and we can take care of them while times are kind of bad. Number 8, the first begins yesterday. So who knows how long it'll take, but I heard on the radio coming over today that there's 4 different companies that are all trying to get the corner on that. Hopefully one of them will. This was a funny one. Man rushes girlfriend to give birth, then finds out the truth. Situation here. Number 6, there's still food. There's 37 places that are carrying out food, and Skyline, you can carry out St. Patrick's Day chili. That's a good thing, right? This is a positive note. There's so many positive people. This is from Christopher Smitherman, who says, I bought a dozen eggs that somebody put back on the shelves, and I was very, very grateful. This is a great country with strong people. I had my own kind of episode of this when I found myself at Kenwood Town Center on Saturday at 10 o'clock, something I never do. I usually only go there once a year, but it was a special day. And somebody had told me there might be some hand sanitizer at Bath and Body Works. So me at Bath and Body Works on a Saturday at 10, this is not a sight. This is worse than me at the garden store at the last interview. I felt that much out of it. But so right at 10, I was at Bath and Body Works, and I said to the lady, I said, do you have any hand sanitizer? She said, we've got 10. Right in front of me darted this lady with a daughter, and they grabbed all 10. You've probably been there if you were at Kroger's over the weekend. And I said to her, I said, would you split that with me? Would you let me get 5 of those? And she said, sure. And that was a great thing. And that's the kind of stuff we've got to do. So it's positive. There's a lot of good people out there. Everybody wants to help if they can. Number 4, there are people helping everywhere to get meals to students while schools are shut down, and that's a great thing. A lot of work. Number 3, hey, you know what? People are ramping up. UC's got tents going up, and we're getting serious about testing, and hopefully we're going to be ready to go if this virus takes off the way they tell us it's going to. And the number 2, hey, spend time with your grandkids. I spent some time with mine over the weekend. It was great. And the number 1 thing to be positive about, no more Tom Brady and the Patriots. That's great news to me. I'm so tired of seeing them win. But so those are my top 10 things to stay positive about. And, you know, I had this case, I don't know, it was a year or 2 ago. And somebody kind of wanted to send me a message about staying positive. They stuck this article in my mailbox. It's one of these things, Bob, I don't know if any of your employees are ever like this, where they didn't tell me who gave it to me. It was kind of a secretive thing. And this article was called How to Train Your Brain to Go Positive Instead of Negative. And I've kept that in my briefcase now for almost 2 years. And I can't think of a better time to kind of bring it out and remind me that there are so many things that we should be positive about. And if you're interested in trying to train your brain to stay positive over the next couple months, which you may need to do, a copy of this article is on empoweryouohio.org under this class. You could just click it, print it out, and hopefully it will help you. So we love doing our giveaways, Betty and I do, and it's always fun to give things away. Tonight, we're going to give 3 copies of Bob's book away, The 7 Secrets to Financial Freedom. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to do it to the first 3 people that ask questions online tonight. So Jay, what I'd ask you to do is try to get email addresses for us when people ask questions. And if you ask questions, if this is your first virtual class, you'll be able to ask questions at the right where it says questions at the bottom of the screen. So we look forward to that, and your book will actually be mailed out to you in the mail. So look forward to that. So what I'd like to do is introduce our well-known guest tonight, and I'm really appreciative to him because he just, when we said, hey, listen, we're not going to have anybody there, would you still be willing to talk? He said, sure, I'd love to come in and do the class. And I think it's good information that I know a lot of you are concerned about. You're just concerned about your finance in general. I know that I am. So Bob Buchner is president of the law firm Buchner, Haffer, Myers & Koenig, LPA in Cincinnati. He's a graduate of Princeton University and the University of Michigan Law School and has earned the prestigious CLU and CNFC designations from the American College. He's been designated as a super lawyer since 2009 and is certified as a specialist in estate planning, trust, and probate law by the Ohio State Bar Association. He's a national recognized authority on tax and financial matters and has authored 6 books, published 18 articles, and has spoken at over 1,000 tax, financial, and motivational forums. And we're just very, very glad to have Bob Buchner here tonight to speak to us. Bob?
Thank you, Dan.
Welcome.
We're
gonna
give it
the bump.
Give it the bump. Okay, let's get this over here in front of the podium.
Put that right up front here, about right there. Excellent.
Good evening, everyone. What a pleasure it is to be with you, and I appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts with you about the Secure Act and about the coronavirus 19 and how we are dealing with that. Let me begin by saying that my last name is pronounced Buechner, and I happen to be the chairman emeritus of my law firm. I was once introduced as somebody who had written 8 books. I stood up and said, no, it's not 8 books I've written. I said, I've written 5 books. It's 8 books I've sold. So the fact that you have a chance to get a free book tonight puts you in a very esteemed group, because that's what I do is make books available to people for free. So let's talk about opportunity, and let's talk about the fact we're all confronted with a new challenge that is very significant, and that along with that challenge comes some opportunities that can be very important for us to be aware of. First, my good friend Ken Bowman says that what really is going to happen here is what Dan alluded to, is that in another 9 months, we're going to have a great big baby boom. So in terms of keeping in touch with friends and family, that's is one of the things I think we can expect. The other thing is that I believe it's very important to keep in touch with family and friends. I have a good friend, his name is Jim Bob. I called him 3 times before he returned my call. It didn't go through. I called him twice more, and finally we hooked up. Guess what? Keep at it. Don't be timid about reaching out to people. This is a very good time to stay connected, because I, like everybody else, have had meetings. Every meeting I've had scheduled has been canceled or it's gone remote. Lunches that I've had scheduled are not going to happen. There just is really a very difference in terms of what is going on in our world and in terms of individual interaction. So keep in touch with family and friends. Another thing, I did this in 2008. And that is based on what was going on with the stock market and with it being a roller coaster or whatever. I tried to kind of predict where it was headed. Guess what? That's a mistake. Don't try to predict what's going to happen with markets. Nobody knows. We don't know where it's going to settle out. We know it's going to be bumpy, but just all I can say is enjoy the ride to the extent that you can. It's not clear that anybody really totally understands what is the situation with where the stock market is headed, other than we know that there are lots of different challenges out there. Okay. All right, so I've been instructed to stand to the side here so you can all see the right part. Okay, so number 2 is do not try to predict where the market's headed. Number 3, what a phenomenal environment we have for low interest rate loans. Why is that important? When I first started estate planning, I had a client who had some money who made a $100,000 interest-free loan to a son that turned into a very nice chance for that son to make a profit, and it was all money that he got to keep. So the government did away with interest-free loans. But guess what? The government sets interest rates. Interest rates are coming way down. It's almost an interest-free rate environment. So it's a wonderful time to go ahead and do planning based on low interest rate loans. It's a great thing to do with children who are trying to build estates or whatever, and you can do it uh, with the blessing of the federal government. And along with that is the sale of assets. Assets are depressed. And whether you see them as depressed or not, you can sell them and sell them for a promissory note, and the promissory note can bear interest. I think it's going to, in the next couple of weeks, it's going to probably be down to like 1% or something, almost zero. So the other thing is that we've had this change in the law. The Secure Act did a couple of things. It raised the age for requirement of distributions to age 72. It also provided that payouts after husband and wife have to be made within a 10-year period. And that's for qualified plans, except defined benefit plans. It's for IRAs and it's for Roth IRAs. So that's a big change. The thing that we as estate planners have done is had a provision in our trust that said that the money could be paid in on a basis where it would hopefully be paid in over the lifetime of the beneficiary. The Secure Act has changed that. It's changed it to where it has to be paid out in 10 years. So we no longer have the chance to have extended payouts of IRAs into a revocable trust. Instead, it's going to be a 10-year period. What does that mean? It means for people who have large IRA accounts, they are going to have to be very careful in their planning that they don't create a huge tax liability for their beneficiaries, because rather than being able to keep some money in the trust and because it's being paid in slowly, a 10-year payout can create a lot of taxes. So we are amending all of our clients' revocable trusts to get rid of a provision that was based on the old law and put in language essentially that says we want to give the ability to the trustee to amend the trust because we want to create maximum flexibility at the time that there's a payout made into the trust. And so from that standpoint, all revocable trusts should be amended, because I think that other attorneys like us have put provisions in there providing for IRAs to be paid in on an extended period of time. Now they have to be paid in on a 10-year period, and that is significant. What that act does, it inspires us to do some planning here to go in the direction of Roth IRAs. And let me discuss that with you. Let's talk about IRAs. We have traditional IRAs and we have Roth IRAs. Each one provides for tax-free growth. So I got tax-free growth here, traditional yes, Roth yes. You don't pay any tax on the growth in either of those IRAs. Tax-free distributions, no for a traditional IRA, yes for a Roth IRA. So the difference is traditional IRAs create taxable income. A Roth IRA creates not just tax-free growth, but tax-free distributions. How about required minimum distributions, which again start at age 72? Yes for a regular traditional IRA, no for a Roth IRA. So if somebody has assets that they've accumulated and they don't want to be taking out money on a taxable basis because they don't need it, what they can do is say, okay, I'm going to get away from a regular IRA. I'm going to try to convert that money into a Roth IRA and thereby not have to take that money out. That money can be there for my spouse. It can then be there for my children. It can be there if I need it. There's nothing that says Roth IRA money has to be set aside for a rainy day. It can be used, and it's wonderful when it's used because it creates tax-free income. But more importantly, it can be used at the discretion of and at the choice of the owner of the Roth IRA, and not on a basis the government tells you that you have to take it. So that's very significant. Now there's a 10-year accumulation, and each of these accounts, think of the fact that when an IRA or a Roth IRA has to be paid out over 10 years, it doesn't have to be ratable. It doesn't have to be every other year. It doesn't have to be half in 5 years and the other half in 10. You can keep that IRA in place for 10 years and then pay it out all at the end of the 10 years. With a regular IRA, if you do that, you're going to wind up with an accumulation account that's going to become taxable, and taxable probably at the highest level. The problem with IRAs being paid into a trust, which is what we prefer for asset protection and to create a generation skipping opportunity, is that the IRA creates the taxes at the highest level on any income over $12,000, because that's the level of trust income where you get into the maximum income tax rate. So when an IRA is paid into a trust Unless it's paid out to a beneficiary, it's going to create a very large tax liability. And the problem with that is that the tax liability requires, or you would think it would necessitate that the beneficiary would say, wait a minute, I don't want it left in the trust. I want it paid out to me because my tax rate's lower than the trust. Well, that would be a good choice. But then you don't have any money left for the future generations. So the trust that maybe was meant to be set up for the benefit of grandchildren and for the benefit of future generations is suddenly void of any IRA dollars because the IRA is created large taxable income which has to be paid out. Okay, so they each have this 10-year accumulation before payout, but the difference is that the regular traditional IRA creates a lot of tax issues, whereas the Roth IRA creates opportunity for money to be accumulated in a trust and to be used as determined by the beneficiary or the trustee who's working with the beneficiary, and to be determined on a basis of what is in their best interest based on cash flow needs, et cetera, and not based on what is going to create the least amount of income taxes. So we need to be very careful about what we're doing with accumulation of assets, because regular IRAs can create a taxable income problem, whereas a Roth IRA allows for the tax-free growth and creates more in the way of discretionary spending. Okay, let's go on to another part of this program, which I think is very interesting, and that has to do with discounts. And I'm going to give you some facts here before I get into analysis. Fact, and these examples are either for me personally or things that I've worked on with clients, and these are real life situations, and they make a real difference. Okay, fact, there's a limited liability company that was purchased where the limited liability company owned real estate in Denver. It was a minority interest. There was a $100,000 investment, and the appraisal came in on that because it was minority interest, lack of control, lack of marketability. The discount came in at 50%. So the person who got that discount rolled that over to a Roth IRA and pay tax on $50,000. Now that's kind of like, that's not pleasant to do. Who wants to pay tax on an extra $50,000? Well, in this case, the investment after 2 or 3 years of sitting in the Roth IRA produced $190,000 of tax-free money. So not only was the investment a good one, and it was practically a double of what was invested, but more importantly, from the standpoint of what tax dollars were paid, it came out to be a factor of 4. So the advantage of having paid tax on $50,000 worked out in a very significant way, because the Roth IRA now has for this individual has $190,000 in it, which will forever be tax-free and can be invested and create tax-free income, whatever. So why wouldn't somebody do this? Well, obviously there aren't all the many LLCs out there that are now available which own Denver real estate, but there are other LLCs that do that. So let's look at another situation. This one is very interesting to me because I had just learned about this one recently in terms of working on a client situation. You can take securities that are securities. We're not talking about doing anything fancy with investments. We're not talking about having you change your portfolio, but you can take securities and put those into a limited liability company. And if you set it up with language that it has to be well crafted by an attorney, but you would set it up so there would be an ability to approve transfers only if more than 80% of the member units approve that. And maybe you set it up also with a child as a manager, so you wouldn't have all the control. You can then create a very significant discount with an LLC that owns securities. So you're not changing investments. You're taking investments that are already there and you're putting them into an LLC, and then maybe if it's an 80% threshold, you would transfer 75% to a Roth IRA, and then you get the discount that applies. And in this case, we have received, or the client has received, a discount of 35%. That's really significant. So if you have a portfolio of, say, $200,000 of securities that you want to get over into a Roth, doesn't it make more sense to try to get some discount on those? So a 35% discount on that would save you $70,000 in tax. So yeah, you roll your $200,000 of that's in an LLC over to a Roth, and you pay tax on 130. Now, in my example, I said we were only going to do 75% of that. So it would really be 75% of the 130 that would be taxable as it rolls over into a Roth. Yes, sir.
Could you explain, would you explain a little bit more? I don't understand what the discount means. So I understand the 200,000 in securities, but I don't understand the discount.
Okay, I think that's a very good question. In the world we live in, you have assets that are valued at their face amount, their face appearance, such as securities. And interesting, the thing that I want everybody to keep in mind is everybody basically now has a discount on their securities because of tremendous meltdown there's been in the market. So securities that may have been worth $100,000 are now worth $75,000. Have the companies changed that much? Well, the marketplace thinks they have, but you could roll those over to a Roth IRA and you pay tax on what? On the fair market value of what you roll over. So all we're talking about is the same concept of fair market value. It's just that we have techniques that are available to us to use something called a limited liability company, which is just kind of like a corporation, but it's something that that helps us with respect to limited liability and also with respect to control issues. And you know, I don't do the appraisals. We go to somebody who is a qualified appraiser who takes a look at what the interest is that's being transferred, and it evaluates it based on what a willing buyer and a willing seller would work out for that interest. And when you, I guess one of the best examples is if you have $100,000 of Procter & Gamble stock, and you go to the marketplace, you're going to be able to sell that for $100,000. But if you put that into a limited liability company and make your son or daughter the manager of that, and then you go to sell that, what's somebody going to pay for something where they don't have any control over distributions? They can't determine when the P&G stock is ever going to be sold. They're dependent on the manager to make all the decisions. That is now less than $100,000. And what the appraisers need to do is come up with how you figure out the discounts for that and what that would be. And a lot of that has to do with control.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so this idea of discounts is fact. These discounts exist. This is not something that's being made up. This is something that is out there and being used all the time in the world of estate planning. Now, let me say one thing about this. This is very interesting in terms of the fact we got an election coming up. One of the first things that Donald J. Trump did when he took office was said to his federal agencies, get rid of all the regulations that are controversial. Get rid of the things that are creating issues out there for the public. We want a business environment that's going to be smooth and running straightforward and not be slowed down by government interference. One of the regulations that was out there that was creating great problems for me as an estate planning attorney were regulations to Section 2704 of the Internal Revenue Code, which basically has to do with the ability of people to take discounts. And the regulations that IRS came up with made it very questionable as to whether you could do these discounts without having IRS come in and challenge them. That regulation was revoked based on Donald J. Trump's insistence that these regulations be cleaned up. So we are now in a very sweet spot. How long will this last? I cannot tell you. A lot depends on what happens with the next election, and then whether if it's not Trump that gets in, if the new president will then reinstall these regulations or whatever. I mean, we don't know, but I can tell you that right now, these discounts are available, and IRS does not have any effective tools to go after these. The one thing that I want you to keep in mind is, however, is that all of these need to be based on good business practices. There needs to be a business purpose for doing things. Why would you, as a parent, have a business purpose of setting up a limited liability company, putting in securities, and then putting a child in as manager? Because you want your children to get experience with investments. You want them to be able to know when to to buy stuff, when to sell things, to have the experience of working with investment advisors. It's very important. And so we've had a lot of situations where we've had very good reasons for getting children involved as managers to help us with this discount. So I guess the thing that I want to leave you with is that this is not necessarily a great plan for 12 months from now. It is a great plan for now. And not only do you have a depressed stock market, but if you believe that the stock market in 12 to 18 months is going to be back to a good number, what an excellent time to do planning. Not just with the securities that you own that have been beaten up, but by putting those into a limited liability company, getting a further discount and winding up with getting these assets into a Roth IRA. Okay, let's look at something that I will get away from. Instead of calling this facts, we're now going to get into an area and call this analysis. This is what I want my clients to consider and to do. Step one, you need to set up a self-directed IRA account. I've had IRA accounts with Morgan Stanley and with UBS, and they don't want any more self-directed accounts. Where do you have to go for a self-directed account? You have to go to Pensco or to Kingdom Trust, and there's another place that I'm sure you can find on the internet. But the self-directed accounts means that you're able to go to that custodian and say, here's my money, and here's what I want to invest in. So it gives you an opportunity to do something to invest in private equity. LLCs are private equity. It gives you a chance to determine where you want the money to go. And if you give them securities, you can say to them, okay, now I want to set up an LLC, and I want the money to go into an LLC with my son or daughter as the manager, and then you've got something then in an IRA that is in place. Okay, so the other thing is, and I've been able to do this with my law firm's 401k plan. We provide for the attorneys to be trustee of their own plan. So they're able to make investments based on what it is they want to do, where they can control that account. So as a self-trustee 401k, I'm able to go ahead and make an investment in a limited liability company that owns real estate or in something else. And so it's easy. I don't have to go to a self-directed account. I can do that within my own qualified plan. But then when I go to roll that over to a Roth IRA, that's when I have to have a custodian that will permit a self-directed Roth IRA. So it's important because that's how you're able to sustain and maintain the investment that you have. So we start with a self-directed IRA, and then we transfer. The easiest thing to do, so you don't get too fancy with real estate or with something else or with a private equity investment, or it could even be a startup. Then we transfer the securities to a limited liability company and have a son or daughter as the manager. And then it should be carefully drafted. So the best thing I think you can do is provide that the LLC will not permit transfers unless transfers are approved by 80% or more of the member interest. So if you need 80% to approve a transfer and you've transferred only 75%, you basically have given somebody something that they can't then go transfer without the consent of the other 25%. So you've given them something that is certainly entitled to a discount because now they have something that has limited usefulness. Jake, is there a question?
Yeah, we have a question online, and you said you're willing to take questions during the presentation. We'll let everybody know that. The question relates to something you said just a couple moments ago. If Trump is not reelected and the regulations are reversed, will the IRS come after these discounts?
I like that question because my opinion is that they have their hands tied. They can't go back on a retroactive basis to something that somebody did in a regime where there really was free and clear sailing as to discounts. If the discounts are put back in, they are going to have to be, if IRS has the ability to attack discounts, there's going to be a day certain that when that law applies, and it'll be going forward from that point. IRS had a terrible time trying to convince the people that are like myself in the estate planning arena that what their discounts regulations made sense anyhow. And that's why they're so controversial. IRS had trouble getting through something that made sense and was acceptable to the tax planning community. So if there's a new administration and they say, gee, we want to go back and put things in place as they were before Donald J. Trump changed everything, guess what? It's still going to be a long time before we wind up with effective regulations for 2704. So there'll still be a window there. But what I'm saying to you is that the window now, to me, is very clear, and it's a wonderful time. This is a sweet time to be doing this type of planning. And it's because IRS has had its primary weapon taken away. And as long as somebody is consistent about good draftsmanship and making sure that they have the right time frame and don't try to rush things through and have a business purpose for doing things, IRS has a very difficult time challenging any of these discounts. So again, that's my analysis on this. And so once you have the, going back again to where we've got an LLC that's set up, and it could be an LLC that owns real estate, it could be an LLC that is involved with hedge funds or whatever. It doesn't matter too much, but I you know, from my perspective, and as part of my opinion as a tax attorney, I would like that investment to be held for like 6 to 12 months before it is then rolled over to a Roth IRA. So given that we're 9 months from the end of the year, it'd be good to do this soon, because if you're going to go ahead and set up a self-directed LLC and you want to give it some time to mature, you'd like to maybe have it mature and roll it over maybe in the next year, maybe early 2021. Because if you do something at the start of the year and you create a tax liability, you don't have to square up with IRS until then April of 2022. So you can control when your taxes have to be paid on these kinds of things. But this is an awesome opportunity. We have a depressed stock market. We have wonderful time to be dealing with discounts, and we do not have IRS out there jumping on these things because they don't have the tools to jump on them. So good time to be doing this kind of planning. Okay, so now the Roth IRA is set up. How does this work? How does this work in a beneficial way? Number one, it still is available to husband and wife on a tax-free basis. And it still is available on the basis where they can take it out over their life expectancies, and it still is asset protected. That's a very good thing. Jake, is there another question? Okay, so husband and wife can still take the money out over their lifetimes. They have everything they want. They've got something that's tax-free. They have this wonderful asset, and if they don't need it and they want to pass it on to their children and maybe even grandchildren, they can now leave it to a trust that's set up to be a legacy trust, set up to provide for generations after generation and have the Roth IRA paid into that at the second of their deaths. Now, whoever's in charge of that trust, and it's probably going to be a son or a daughter that they name as trustee, is going to make the determination that the best thing they can do with the Roth IRA is just let it accumulate for 10 years. Why take anything out of it? Just let it grow. And as long as they don't need the money, let it grow and then pay it into the trust all at one time after 10 years, because now it no longer is tax-free after it's paid in. It's paid in, it's tax-free, but then as it grows and creates taxable income, now that's taxable. But you can have a large amount of money that now is in a trust that can stay there and doesn't have to be paid out to create the lowest income tax bracket possible. Yes, sir.
Okay, a couple of interesting questions. Number one, if a married child is the manager of an LLC, is this LLC a marital asset in the case of the child's divorce?
The whole LLC is not a marital asset, but the managing member interest that is owned by the child would be a marital asset. But it may not consist of anything other than just a management responsibility. It would be very hard to evaluate that in a divorce situation. So just by making a child a manager doesn't subject the whole family to a divorce situation.
Okay, one more question. With the current COVID-19 situation, could these provisions, I guess the sweet spot that we're in, so to speak, could they be reversed immediately due to a declaration of a national emergency? What would we need to watch for?
I am into something that I would say is an opinion as opposed to fact. My opinion is that the national emergency would not ever go back to try to jump on people who have done tax planning and try to further their interest. I mean, the national emergency that we have has to do with health and with well-being and putting more money into people's pockets. In fact, Trump, I think tonight, was talking about giving everybody $1,000 because to help them with making expenses and stuff. And so this would be just the opposite of that for a national emergency to jump on people for tax planning. So I think just the opposite. If anything were to happen, they'd loosen the rules and they would say to IRS, leave people alone. Don't be so hard on audits. Let people pay their way and not be too hard on people who've done tax planning. That to me would be much more of an appropriate response. So we've had our 3 questions. So we have 3 books to give out. Have you gotten email addresses for people so I can get in touch with them, or you can give me all I need is addresses and I'll send them the book. So that's good. I'm very happy to do that, and I hope that they will enjoy the book, and they may even, if they read through the book, see a part in there that has that basically recites what I've talked about here in terms of a planning opportunity where real estate was purchased and discounted and then sold. So again, as a tax attorney, and when I'm working with clients, I want to make sure that the assets that they've accumulated are going to be available to the people they want them to be available to and not be available to creditors and predators of children. So how do we protect them with that? Well, we have a trust that we call a generation skipping trust, which basically means that when money goes into the trust, it's not going to ever be subject to estate taxes. And so that's a very good thing, but it also means that there's a spendthrift provision, so money will not be paid out if it's going to be captured by somebody who is other than the chosen beneficiary. So these types of trusts are very important. What's interesting to me about this whole area of IRAs and Roth IRAs is that Roth IRAs and regular traditional IRAs are asset protected at the level of husband and wife. And if either one of them ever gets sued for anything, the person that sues them cannot attack and go after their IRA account. However, at the second death, that IRA is then passed on to children. If it's passed outright to children, in Ohio, it's still protected. But how many of us who live in Ohio and maybe have children who live in Ohio now, how many of us think our children are going to live in Ohio forever? We don't know. And so the problem is they move to some other state. They may move to a state where that asset is not protected. So I do not like leaving IRAs and even Roth IRAs outright to a child. The best way to get it to them is through a trust. And even if the trust has to be modified to include new language to create flexibility on income taxes, it's better to have a trust with that special language added and keep the IRA and the Roth IRA flowing through that trust to create asset protection. And then you can work with the trust language to create the best income tax result possible. So trusts are so important. And so when we talk about estate planning after the Secure Act, a lot of the principles are the same, and that is that in my opinion, anybody who has significant assets, and significant, I'm talking about $100,000 or more, ought to have a trust to help avoid probate, and ought to have a trust to help out the next generation, and ought to have a trust to create the best income tax result possible, as well as to provide for asset protection. So, yes, sir, another question.
So when you were talking about the LLC and the discount, and is that how many assets would you have to make that a worthwhile strategy?
It is to some extent the appetite that somebody has for paying taxes. So somebody who's got an IRA with only
I've got a big appetite in that direction.
Yeah, I mean, the size of your appetite helps you with the size that you'll be able to get into a Roth IRA. So even if somebody has has $100,000 in an IRA, and they say, this has been beaten down. It used to be 200,000. Now it's 100,000. I'd like to make it even lower. I'd like to make it a Roth IRA. This is my time to do this. I have a job. I'm going to be able to pay the taxes. Guess what? They can take that 100,000, set up a self-directed IRA account, and then roll that money into a LLC that's going to have family members involved and be able to get the discounts, and then in another 6 months or so, transfer that to a Roth IRA and pay the tax on that. That's an absolutely wonderful result. That is a great result for them to take advantage of the fact, number one, their securities account's been beaten up by this meltdown that we've been experiencing, and number two, all these discount issues are available to them. So even somebody that's got a modest account can do this. This is not investing in a startup business. This is not doing something that is high risk. This is just simply solid tax planning that benefits individuals, and they're paying taxes on the rollover based on what an appraiser will tell them is the value of the interest that they're transferring to a Roth IRA.
So to take an example, if you had a $100,000 regular IRA that you wanted to move to a Roth IRA, you have to pay the tax on the $100,000 at ordinary income? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and somebody can do that, and if they say, hey, I hear what Buechner's saying, but I don't want to go through the hassle, I don't want to pay an attorney to help me, I don't want to pay for the appraiser, I just go ahead and take my beaten down securities account and roll it over to Roth, they can do that, God bless them. And they don't need a self-directed Roth account for that. They can just take their securities and roll them over to a Roth with the same institution where they have their regular IRA and be done with it and pay the tax on the $100,000. And that's fine. I have no problem with that, except that it's more in taxes than they need to pay. And they can save themselves some money by just jumping through some hoops from a planning standpoint.
Thank you.
Jake, another question?
Yeah, one more question from an online viewer. The question is, does life insurance let the money grow tax-free longer than a Roth if they don't need the income?
Another very good question. I absolutely love life insurance, and it is something that if it's purchased with both eyes open and there's care taken to buy a product that will stand the test of time, then somebody can have something that will then pay tax-free at the second death of husband and wife and pay into a generation skipping trust. So one strategy here for people who have significant IRA accounts is they can do some of this Roth IRA rollover. They don't have to do it with the whole thing. And then they can take some of their other distribution and use that to buy a second to die life insurance policy. So for husband and wife, you pay the premium, and it's not a, it all depends on health and age and those kinds of things and dealing with a company. But I very much like my clients to get involved with life insurance products that are no lapse. I want them to buy something that as long as they pay the premium, the death benefit will be there, because it's amazing to me what life insurance companies can get away with. I'm a trustee of a trust for a good friend who's in his early 80s, and I got a notice from the company that said, you can't do anything about this, but we are lowering your death benefit and we're raising your premium. End of discussion. I thought, wait a minute, how is that fair? How do they have the right to do that? Well, it's that's what evidently is in the life insurance policy, that, they maybe have their own extreme circumstances that requires them to do that. And they've been, insurance companies haven't been able to make the kind of money that they have in the past on bonds and real estate mortgages. And so a lot of insurance companies are hurting. So it's very important that if somebody wants to buy an insurance policy, they're getting it from a very solid company, and they get something that's a no lapse policy. But that's a very good way to fund a generation skipping trust. That's a very good way to create a lot of money for future generations. The key thing is if for husband and wife to do that with an IRA account, they need to be very comfortable with the money that they have to live on for the rest of their lives. And then if they want to tie it in and with some Roth IRA planning too, I think that's a great thing. I mean, I think this is a great time to be doing Roth IRAs, just because assets that were worth $100,000 just weeks ago are now worth $70,000. That's a 30% discount right there on stock in companies. These are good companies that have been hammered. So just to roll that over it would be a good strategy. But do it on a thoughtful basis where you involve an LLC and get a further discount and stuff, that to me is like a home run. That gives you a double benefit out of being hammered by this very pickled stock market. So I don't want to repeat myself too much. Jake, do you have another question, or are you okay back there? So again, estate planning, because of the coronavirus, and estate planning because of the Secure Act, is basically creating opportunity to take advantage of assets that have been beaten up, to take advantage of the opportunity to know what's going to happen with distributions, and to basically preserve and protect assets for future generations. And in the whole process, as you do that, as you get money into Roth IRA, for husband and wife, it doesn't jeopardize their future. They have absolutely as good a future with regard to their assets as they had before they did that, because now they have an asset that if they need it, it will be tax-free. So what could be better than that? What could be better than going through a planning strategy to create an opportunity that basically is good for husband and wife and is even really much, much better for future generations? So that is my story, and I'm sticking to it because I believe in it, and I'm happy to work with anybody to make that happen. Thank you.
Well, I guess we could say we'll give you a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bob, for coming in tonight, and we surely appreciate you being here. What an interesting discussion and presentation. So this is the book. 3 of you are going to get a free copy of this. There will be a 4th copy of this in the Empower You library when we take the locks off the doors and let everybody back in. And let me just read you one comment about the book on the back. This book is a must-read if you want to get ahead in the financial game. Gosh, you're all going to have a little bit of time on your hands. Let us know if you want to get a copy of the book if you're not one of the 3 people, and we'll talk about it. So to repeat, over the next several weeks, we hope to surprise you with a few classes that pop up, and we'll be letting you know which of our classes we're going to be able to show virtually, just like this one. And we hope to keep you engaged because we know you have a lot of time on your hands, and we just want you to be safe, be positive, and thanks for tuning in tonight to Empower You.